Hi, I'd like to show you a couple of watercolour brushes I've made for Corel Painter 2020. The first one is my speckled watercolour brush. It has colour variability built in and it shows the grain of the paper. And this second one is my watercolour striated grainy edge brush. So this first one, the speckled watercolour brush, it shows the grain of the paper. You can see it coming up, the little dots, that's the paper grain. So if I choose a different paper, this one, it's from the 2015 library and it's this metallic bubbles. We get a completely different look. You can reduce the grain amount here. So now when we make a stroke, it's not, the speckling is not so pronounced. I'll reset the grain to 100 and I'll choose a thick scratchy sketch paper, which is this one. And you can see this gives a mottled effect. I'll make a stroke here. Again, if I back off the grain a bit, you can see it shows it less pronounced. And that's quite a nice pattern. You could use it for leaves, you know, variegated leaf texture. I'll reset the grain to 100. So if I choose the subtle cracks paper texture and the blue colour, you get something like this. If I increase the scale of the texture and now paint, we get something that looks like sunlight on a pool. We could reduce the grain a little and that would make the effect less pronounced, but it's still there. So I'll reset it to 100 and I'll click on this advanced button and click on the shape and size, and I'll put the size up to about 240. Start with a new layer and just cover this. And I'll go back to the layer below. And click on the grain button and change the angle so to get something else, say something like that. I'll choose a slightly different colour. And now I'll paint another layer. and this gives us more depth. If I turn that first one off, you can see the markings are different here. Turn this one back on, you can see it's got different markings. We can change the blend mode here. I'll choose the first layer and I'll try Magic Combine. It's quite nice. Or I could choose Darken. It's another one that's quite nice. And you can change the visibility to get different effects. More of the second layer would be showing through. Let's try something else. It's different luminosity. Again, you can change it now. That's quite nice, very subtle. Anyway, you can experiment with all these different blend modes and try some of these other papers up here as well. I'll set it back to basic, which is this first one. Now, going back to the size, I'll set it to about 300. And now when I make a stroke, you can see the sort of short floppy strokes. Depending on how hard you press, because this has got pressure as the expression for sides, so you could get big blobs or just little tiny little marks. It's quite pretty. Again, I can change the paper to that metallic bubbles, which I rather like, and that's what you get with that. Another paper that's good is this one, Big Bumps. If I select grey from this colour panel, I can get things that look a bit like rocks. Also, another paper is the Artist Rough paper. I like this one. It gives this lovely sort of grainy, pebbly almost effect. Very nice. So I'll turn this off and I'll go back to layer below. Then I'll go to this dab profile. I can change this dull profile to say pointy, pointy, that one. And you get a mark like that. Which seems more dark in the centre, gets lighter towards the outside. Another one is the watercolour brush. And this one is a very interesting one. It gives all these overlapping circles. But if you make the size small, not so pronounced the circles, but there's this lovely variation in the texture. And again, I guess if we picked a green colour, we could get something that looked a bit like plants. It's a very interesting texture. So if I make the size bigger, and now look at another way to make texture, which is by increasing the spacing, and then we can make repeated strokes over and over, and that builds up a different sort of texture. Could make the spacing even more. If we look now at the colour variability of the brush, I've built a little into it, as you can see. In HSV we've got some hue and some value. I haven't increased the saturation slider because I want that saturation to stay the same. So just picking a colour, you can, I think I already set the brush. Okay, so just picking that colour, you get that sort of variation. We can increase it even more. Or you could turn it off and just get one colour. Or take it all the way up and get big variation in the colour and value, dark to light, or you could keep the value change low and just have huge colour variation with little value change, or you could just take the value change off and have a lot of colour variation. And we can also change the way the variability is chosen by changing this HSV to RGB. The other two, gradient and colour set, are not options for this brush. So just going to the RGB, we could change that. We could have red, green and blue changes. Alter these sliders and get different effects. Okay, so we look at the second brush I made, which is this one, the watercolour striated grainy edge brush. Now I'll pick blue and you can see what happens. As the stroke develops, you get this grainy edge and a sort of crossways across the width, slight, very subtle striation. It's more apparent when you lay it down, but it's still there as it develops. We can increase the hue and value sliders and get more variation of colour and value. I don't want to change the saturation. I'll show you what happens with that one. You get more saturated colour and less saturated colour. I don't like that effect terribly much, so I keep that one right down. Now we could also change the way opacity is expressed by going up to this opacity button and changing this to something else, say pressure. Now when I press lightly, it will be very light. And as I increase the pressure, it gets darker and darker still. But because we've got size also governed by pressure, the light pressure will give you small size, medium pressure large, and high pressure will give you big. So if I just do one continuous stroke, you can see it changing from light to medium to dark and narrow to wider to widest. We could change this expression on the sides to none. Then when I press lightly, it'll be the same size. When I press a little heavier, it's a bit darker. When I press very heavily, it's a lot darker. But the size is the same. I'll put the pressure expression back on the sides. The other thing, of course, you can do is go back to the opacity and invert the way the opacity is expressed. So now when I press lightly, it'll be dark, heavier, less dark, and heaviest will be the lightest. So it's the opposite of what we had before. For instance, if we choose nice blue and this down a bit, you've got to practice a bit, but when you get it just right, you can have the effect of sunlight on water. I'll reset the brush. The wetness is at 38, and this is what we get. Now if I increase wetness, get a different look. The other thing you can do is increase the diffusion. That spreads it out even more. It's quite a nice effect now. So let's increase the wetness a bit more. See what we get. Oh, very nice. Gosh. Okay, so now let's try reducing it. It was on 38, so let's go to say 1. We've still got the diffusion at 100. I'll reset the brush so diffusion is back to default and turn the wetness down. So reducing it low gives this thin grainy edge and more of a filled-in look, whereas when we had it up high, it's a bit too high. You get this thicker grainy edge all around these strokes. If we turn the diffusion quite low, it's hardly any spreading. It's much more intense colour. If we put it, say, midway, once we get the striations show up nicely, and we get thin, grainy edge border if we take it up. To sort of default for the brush we get. And we saw what taking it all the way up would do. Okay, so you could also change the damp profile for different looks. Let's try linear. Now give some more pronounced streak down the middle with the diffusion all round. Let's reset the brush. So we're back to these settings and then change it now to linear. That's quite a nice subtle effect. And let's try watercolour, which is this one. This gives these lovely overlapping circles, which is quite an interesting effect. And then you get this grainy edge all round. Let's try turning up the wetness and the diffusion, see what we get with that. Yes, interesting. Okay, so I'll reset it now. You can make all sorts of little patterns with this brush. Make circles. Dots. Dashes. Build up an interesting texture. You can make curves. You can do weaving. And you can also build up complex patterns just by scribbling. Well, that's about it for these brushes. If you're interested in them, you can get them by becoming a patron for me at www.patreon.com/aurolisart. The link is in the description below. Thanks for watching and bye for now.